Hey guys, it's Mainas and I'm going to react to WWE WrestleMania 17, the dark truth that nearly ended in tragedy. This is basically I think WrestleMania 17, the best WrestleManias of one of the best WrestleManias of all time, but there is some things that happened during the event where they say Tommy Dreamer had to did some unquestionable things on his mind, because at that point he was almost in the verge of doing something that's more tragic, but good thing nothing went wrong, and hopefully that in future events none of this will ever happen again. But this is one of those type of videos that we will get to know each detail of why this had to happen. So let's get into the video.
Well, WrestleMania 17 is widely regarded as one of the best WrestleMania events of all time. However, whilst fans and wrestlers were enjoying the show, one wrestler almost changed the course of history, and WrestleMania 17 was just minutes away from becoming the darkest night in wrestling history. Join us now as WrestleMania looks at WrestleMania 17 nearly ended in tragedy. Be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell for daily wrestling videos, and follow us on Facebook for exclusive lists. Also check out our new videos on WrestleMania XL.
Historic night.
Fans will recall the chaotic TLC 2 featuring the Hardy Boys, Dudley Boys and Edge and Christian all sacrificing their bodies on the line for a chance at the gold. We had the pure wrestling clinic of Kurt Angle versus Chris Benoit, father and son thrashing each other in the ring in one of wrestling's biggest entertainment spectacles, a true brawl between wrestling's greats of Triple H and The Undertaker, adding another notch onto the dead man streak, and of course, the show's controversial ending where Austin turned heel and sided with his archenemy Vince McMahon. Now sure, the show wasn't flawless, there were notable duds and pure filler, but WrestleMania 17 remains as a true spectacle, closing out the Attitude Era and ushering in a new era full of ruthless aggression.
ECW's life and soul. Tommy Dreamer.
Now, Tommy Dreamer was considered by many to be the life and soul of the original ECW brand. Dreamer wasn't just a beloved talent, he had a big influence backstage, and some would even claim that he was Paul Heyman's right-hand man. The relationship between Dreamer and Heyman was defined by established trust and loyalty. But when ECW went under in 2001, this relationship was shattered. According to Dreamer on his podcast, Heyman screwed him over in a major way when it came to the end of the company. When ECW went out of business, I was 29 years old. I had a lot of my money, my parents' money, trying to float the company. I thought me and Paul Heyman were super tight, but he screwed me over big time. Dreamer felt utterly betrayed, as despite Dreamer consistently having offers from other promotions such as WCW, he stayed loyal to ECW, whereas Heyman himself ended up signing for WWE and debuted on television as an announcer. I went from a $750,000 offer, and Paul crying to me that if I leave ECW, it'll go out of business. Meanwhile, he was getting a paycheck from WWE. I don't begrudge him, but then I did. At this point in time, with everything happening with the...
That's kind of a bit sad, because unfortunately he could have a good amount of money, but he was staying loyal. And I think that people should understand they should at least be careful not to at least be too much loyal to any companies or any higher ups, because you don't know, they're gonna screw you over regardless. And it's kind of a bit sad because he could at least have that type of money. During that time, it was very big, it was almost worth millions at that point. But man, it's really sad, to be honest.
Dissolvement of ECW, as well as his relationship and friendship with Heyman breaking down, Dreamer entered a state of depression, and Dreamer would label his depression as depressed can be. I was depressed as depressed can be. I had women, I had fame, I had everything, and yet it was the worst time of my life. It really was. I was making decent money on the indies, but I lived at home. In relation to Heyman's reaction to his so-called friend entering a dark period in his life, Heyman attempted to make it right, and Heyman's plan was to use his influence within WWE to make Dreamer part of WrestleMania 17. Heyman's idea was to bring Dreamer in for the TLC 2 match, and Dreamer would have been involved in the spot which saw various names such as Lita and Spike Dudley interfere in the match. Obviously, these plans were cancelled, which furthered the divide between Dreamer and Heyman, and Dreamer would sink further into his depressed state.
The plan.
The WrestleMania 17 plans being cancelled didn't just lead to Dreamer resenting Heyman. Dreamer decided that this was it when it came to their friendship, and he was going to exact revenge on Heyman in the worst way possible. According to Dreamer, his plan was to legitimately assassinate Heyman live on air as he was calling WrestleMania 17 alongside Jim Ross. Dreamer would then turn the gun on himself and in turn become the ultimate martyr. Dreamer managed to get this idea from an indie show where he discovered that Texas had an odd rule that fans could bring in firearms into the building. But this is when it all came together for Dreamer and he began to put his sinister plan into motion. I was across the street from the Astrodome. It resonated in my head so much. I tell you what I wanted to do. It's sick that I think this. At WrestleMania, I was gonna hop the rail and whack Paulie in the back of the head right at the announce table. Then I was gonna whack myself, the ultimate martyr. I was gonna hit my pose, crack, boom, pull the trigger. Because I was that insane. That's what I was thinking about every day. I was like, I will go down in history. Pop, boom. That night, Dreamer was in the parking lot at WrestleMania 17, and he was insanely close from creating one of the darkest days in pro wrestling history.
Damn, man. Jim Ross saves this thing. Yeah.
But what really happened, and what convinced Dreamer to change his mind? Well, it all came from a call from JR, who called Dreamer to let him know that he and WWE were still thinking of using him in the coming months. Randomly, I get a phone call from a number I didn't know. I didn't pick up. I remember having these thoughts, which was bad, thinking about the horribleness that I would have done to my legacy. This was the turning point for Dreamer, and the moment of clarity that he needed. I would have ruined WrestleMania. I love WrestleMania. These thoughts were so crazed in my head. How dare that person? He screwed my parents over, and I came from a mobster mentality. I was like, I would become infamous, which is famous for the wrong reason.
The aftermath.
A Dreamer would manage to put his life back together, and JR kept his word. Dreamer would make his official full-time WWE debut a few months later, and Dreamer would spend several years in the company. This information didn't come to light until just a few years ago, and it's possible that Dreamer would have never been hired if he made this public during his time as an active talent for the company. Naturally, the information disclosed by Dreamer is dark and disturbing, and WWE may have wanted to distance themselves from an individual who even thought of murdering someone live on their biggest pay-per-view of the calendar year.
What could have been?
When Dreamer first shared this information a few years ago, fans initially assumed that Dreamer may have been somewhat exaggerating. Why did he wait so long to reveal this information, and what was the benefit of revealing this information now? It's also bizarre that names such as JR and Heyman have never officially commented on this topic. It's entirely possible that both men reached out to Dreamer privately, but it's not far-fetched to suggest that Dreamer informed them privately when he was in WWE. If Dreamer went through with his plan, well, what would have happened? Well, it goes without saying that this would have changed WWE forever. Two names being killed live on air would have changed how WWE was perceived, and it would have essentially impacted their standing in society moving forward. On the show itself, the pay-per-view broadcast would have been brought to an immediate close, and subsequent police and potential FBI investigation would have followed. The motivations for Dreamer's actions would have been explored in depth by relevant bodies, and it would have been ruled that WWE weren't permitted to produce shows until the investigation was completely closed. Now, it's hard to say if WWE would have shut down altogether, but there would have been an element of apprehension from fans and talent to attend shows, mainly out of fear as well as trauma. A Dreamer claimed in his tell-all podcast that fans would have thought it was an angle, and whilst this is true, it would have taken a matter of minutes before they realized that two people had just had their lives ended. WWE would have had a difficult task in continuing as a thriving business if the incident occurred. 2001 was an insane year for WWE, and although they were slowly coming out of the Attitude Era, they were still delivering record numbers, and the product itself was still receiving universal acclaim. WrestleMania 17 in itself is considered by many to be the greatest WWE pay-per-view of all time, and if Dreamer followed through on his plan, then the reputation of the pay-per-view would have been tainted forever. From a strictly business standpoint, not a single sensible company would want to remotely associate with WWE at this point. They were a publicly traded company by this point in 2001, and they had sponsors left, right, and center. Any sponsors and respective stockholders would have wanted to distance themselves from the company completely, and this would have meant that WWE would have struggled to balance the books. It would also be fair to assume that wrestlers themselves may have looked to leave WWE. This happening would have caused immense mental anguish, especially those that were close to Dreamer and Paul Heyman. Names such as Jim Ross would have witnessed the tragedy firsthand, and this would have been something that JR would have been reliving in his head to this very day. Frightfully, this would have been a moment etched in the memory of millions of people, and 2001 wasn't exactly the dark ages, so the specific clip of Dreamer's axe would have been quickly distributed. If it occurred, then it's likely that in modern times, it would have been a moment that was seen in documentaries and viral videos across social media platforms.
A lesson.
But is there a lesson to take from Dreamer's story? Well, the first thing to acknowledge is that Dreamer's mental state needs to be taken into account when he's judged. Due to the nature of the story, fans were stunned and in total disbelief when they first heard the news, and thankfully Dreamer is in a much better place in his life, and that's evident with him making his personal struggles public for the first time. Perhaps the message here is that mental health in pro wrestlers should always be taken seriously. Wrestlers put their lives on the line in the ring, and it's not uncommon for them to devote every fiber of their being to the pro wrestling industry. Now, there's a ton of discourse focusing on companies such as WWE needing to make sure wrestlers are safe in the ring, but little is discussed when it comes to the mental health of in-ring performers. Wrestlers knowing they can speak out when they are struggling with inner demons is vital, and having their peers, fans, as well as professionals show genuine support and guidance may make all the difference in the world. Now, thankfully, this moment never came into fruition, and technically this pay-per-view should now be known as the day Jim Ross saved Paul Heyman.
And that's the video, guys. All I can say is that there are a lot of things that need to be addressed. Of course, mental health has always been the number one priority because, you don't know what's on their minds if they're been through a struggle. And if you see or hear people, you try your best to reach out to them and to do whatever you can to, get the help that they need. But also, in this type of events, I don't know if Tommy needs to address this in public at some point later years, because I feel like you could at least kept it just to make sure, because it's okay to, express how you feel, but you don't need to say into details that could lead to, that could lead people thinking about you as this individual. But good thing that he's in a much better place. And again, as I said it before, it's not that too simple to give all your loyalty to one company or to someone, because they're going to use you whatever they could, and that's the thing that's gonna hurt you. Again, there are a lot of better opportunities that may gonna be part of your life, and hoping for the best that you can achieve them, but you have to make some good decisions, because let's face it, it's not about being selfish. You know what's best for yourself and for your family. But again, this is a video that needed to give some thoughts and opinions to be addressed by people, to think that, okay, we know that this man has been through a lot, and good thing that it didn't happen, thank God, because it could really change the landscape of the company forever. Let's face it, like no sponsorships, no events that's gonna happen until the investigation is come to close, and it's gonna be those type of things that is gonna hurt everything that WWE has been building for years. And that's all. But all I can say is that give it a like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. Hit the bell for notifications. All I can say is that thank you for watching, guys. We will see each other in the next video. Peace.